Hi everyone, this is Misha Norland from the School of Homeopathy. It's fabulous to be with you here on this podcast. Thank you, Eugenie, for the opportunity to introduce the school and share one of our lectures. I've selected a lecture by my father, Misha Norland, where he's introducing and talking about the four elements, the Mappa Mundi, which is a sensational tool that can be used in homeopathy for better understanding our patients and their pathology, but also for mapping the remedies and understanding our materia medica. So in this lecture, Misha gives a wonderful introduction to earth, water, air and fire, and the transition of energy into matter and how that links to seasons and the temperaments and life stages and many other areas as well. So I'm sure you'll find it a stimulating and interesting lecture, which might make you want to go on and learn more about the Mappa Mundi and the four elements. I certainly hope so. And if you do, then of course you can buy Misha's book, The Four Elements, or you can enroll on one of our courses. We'd always love to hear from you. Check us out at homeopathyschool.com. And we are here to help if you ever have any questions. Thanks everyone, enjoy the lecture. Bye now.
Well, it's quite traditional in the Indian system and therefore has been taken up through esoteric astrology and theosophy to have the notion of the four elements evolving with the most ethereal at the top, as it were, and as the preformative or spiritual impulse condensing into thicker and thicker manifestation, reaching finally the base level of the earth itself. So we start off with the element of fire, the quality, the primary quality of which, of course, is heat, as being the first element to come into creation, so that the outpouring, the original outpouring of energy from which the universe is manifest was an outpouring of energy, raw energy. And the closest we have as a physical experience of that original raw energy is fire, the flickering flame, the heat of fire. As fire begins to solidify, it becomes cooler, as it were. It becomes cooler and more dense. It changes, the quality changes into the quality of air. As you know, air moves rapidly but doesn't dance as speedily as fire. And the quality of air is actually different. Whereas fire is obviously hot, air has the quality of coldness. So we move from one polar experience to another polar experience, the polar opposites. And to give an idea, when I first had these ideas put together, air, cold, I wasn't quite sure about it. So it's worth considering for a moment, because after all, air can blow hot. It depends where the wind is coming from. And yet the quality of air is to cool. If we wish, for instance, to know which way the wind is blowing, isn't it true that we suck our thumb and hold it up into the wind? And as the air evaporates the water from our finger, the evaporating side becomes cooler. So the cold side of the finger indicates the wind's direction. That's one example, quality of air being cold. Well, this idea will, of course, reoccur many times. We'll take it many times as we go through the diagram. And now the quality of air becoming more solid and condensing metamorphoses into the element water. This is still fluid, of course, but the movement of water is slower than the movement of air, just as the movement of air was slower than the flickering tongues of flame, fire. Naturally, the quality of water is to be wet. And finally, there is a movement through to earth itself. The quality of earth is to be dry. I know that some earth is very wet in this country, it is. But if you think of pure earth element, maybe as we would see it in the deserts, or perhaps in savannah, then we would be very clear about the idea of earth, pure earth element being dry and, of course, solid, crystalline, and it contains the gems, the rocks, the stones, and the metals and the ores. So if we take those qualities, hot, cold, wet, and dry, and look at them in combinations, we'll start with wet and hot. Wet and hot in combination, you will see it's associated with the season of spring. And again, it may be such that spring is not always wet and hot. But the idea of spring is a time when the warmth of the sun and the water from the rain penetrating the earth germinates seeds, and it is the beginning of things, the springing forth, the germination point. Indeed, if we have images for hot and wet, we come up with steam and geysers. The whole idea is one of rapid expansion and of fast blossoming of growth. Between hot and dry, we get what we would all dream of having, a hot and dry summer. And the images here, you see I've written in lava, which is obviously hot, dry earth, and also the kiln. It's hot and dry, and no doubt you will think of many more images that can be used to have that combination of qualities. Any thoughts? Well, where are hot and dry places?
Desert.
Yes, desert. And actually, where are hot and wet places? The hottest and wettest places?
Equatorials.
Equatorial, yes. Jungles. All right, let's look at dry and cold. See, it's autumn. It's not our autumn is not like that, but any autumn in a large landmass is very much like that. Cold and dry. So dust was one idea. Space is another. What about land masses that are cold and dry? Places that are prominently cold and dry. The steppes, right? Yeah. And to winter, of course, cold and wet. And cold and wet, the two aspects. If we are wet primarily and then cold, we have mist. If we're cold primarily and then wet, we have ice. And, well, we'll return to those ideas in a minute. But first of all, let's look at the diagram called the Four Ages of Man. Now, we'll start with winter here. Winter is a time of dormancy. It's a time when things slow down, when the sap returns to the roots, the leaves have fallen from the trees, everything is dormant, waiting for the birth of spring. It's a period in which nature hibernates. And it's also a kind of gestation, isn't it? Awaiting the birth of spring. And so the ancient Greeks, putting together the concepts of the seasons and of the elements and of the temperaments and of the four ages of man, one of the ways in which they organized made the two maps to be coincident was to have conception and uterine growth in the quadrant of winter. Obviously, spring is for birth and also childhood. It's a time of expansion. It's a time when the sap rises and swells the buds on the trees. Summer, which is most dynamic in its quality, can be explosive sometimes, is the time for adolescence and early adulthood, the time of the greatest dynamic energies, the time of building and of constructing, a time of greatest physical potential. And of course, autumn, where we contract back again, ready for winter, where things begin to die away, become smaller and atrophy, is the time for middle age and especially for old age. Literally, old people become smaller as the cartilage between their vertebrae shrivels.
I don't like the analogy of autumn middle age. Or I find that difficult. Because that's still summer. That's when you've had the energy and the expansion in your young adulthood and you're beginning to acquire experience and wisdom. But you're not contracting.
See, I think then change it. Then change it in your diagram, change it.
See it as a time of harvest.
Yeah.
Autumn's the harvest, the richness of all the experiences.
Right. But what I really mean is, I'm with you, Mariette. I personally enjoy having it here and feel it's right. But if you don't like it, change it, because the thing we have to remember as always, these are maps of a territory. It's only a map. There are many maps that we can have for the same territory.
Contraction bothers me.
The idea of contraction, right? But it's contraction, it's under the influence of Saturn, you know. Contraction into wisdom. It's where the great energy, the great dynamic of the earlier part of life is beginning to draw away, and you're left with the power to contract your life, to contemplate upon it, to have wisdom rather than blind action, if you see what I mean.
Isn't it just a question of inwardness rather than outwardness of adolescence?
Right.
Isn't that what you're trying to say?
It is indeed. A time of inwardness and a time of harvest. But the Greeks themselves, they had two ways. Sometimes they put spring for the position of birth, summer for the position of childhood and adolescence, autumn for adulthood, and winter for old age. They had two versions of the map. I have put down one, but there's also the alternative. And the alternative is closer to what you're suggesting. You may prefer it swapped around.
Yes, I learned that the winter is the fire time, when the inner fire is most active. And spring is the time of water, and summer is the time of air, and autumn is the time of earth.
Right.
And I'm just spending some time adjusting.
Oh, right. Quite. In all the systems that I have come across, bar this one, and I'll come to that in just a moment, all the systems have had the temperaments and the elements coincident. So that the division was into a quaternity, a fourfold division, whereas here we have an eightfold division. And what has happened is that there's been a shifting apart of the qualities of the temperaments and the qualities of the elements by 45 degrees. They've been teased out, as it were. And this particular mapping in this way is, I've not seen it prior to Joseph Revis, who put it this way. Whether it's his invention or not, I cannot say. Right. And there's another thing that I hiccuped over personally, which was in the Greek texts and in the alchemical texts, the oppositions of the elements is different. You know, because fire and water are oppositions, and air and earth are oppositions. And here it is different.
This way, but with the seasons the other way around.
Oh, I see, right.
I'll start thinking.
Right.
Thinking.
Right. Just to come back to the point, this is not a correct map and the other maps are incorrect. It's not like that. Do you feel happy to move on? Well, this is quite a leap, actually, because in place of winter, spring, summer, and autumn, we now have lymphatic, sanguine, choleric, and melancholic. And you see, we'll start with springtime, the time of expansion, of dilation, of opening, of the juices beginning to flow, the sap rising, the energy coming through the pipe, as it were, full bore, or beginning to push open into full bore, gives us a temperament which is spontaneous, chatty, bouncy, intense, colourful, and actually optimistic. And a keynote for this character type is the person who's always full of hopeful intensity, ready to leap into the world. What's new? What's happening? Isn't it wonderful? Let me tell you about it. You know that type. And that is the description, the quite standard description of the sanguine character. So we have qualities like anguish and ecstasy, passion and pain. It belongs to, you could say, it belongs to childhood. And indeed, coming into the adolescence also, we can be very much like this. Early period of adolescence. Also, these people very often, because they are like that, they're so open, so interested in everything, they have a need for other people. In other words, company ameliorates. They love to be with others. Because imagine this character springing through the world on her own, or his own. It would be uncharacteristic. So, because they like very much to be with other people, to share and to communicate, they tend to form very close attachments. So this is a period in one's life where bonding is very important. There are people who tend to need others. Now, if we put all these ideas together that we have so far, are the sanguine, the spring, the idea, the springtime we associated with hot and wet and with rainforest, tropical rainforests. And now, if as homeopaths, we think of what character we're discussing, out of the rainforests, this character is Lachesis. Because Lachesis is typical for the sanguine temperament, typical example of this kind of person.
Any others?
Yes, there'll be many others, but I would like, unless you have some ideas now.
Now I've seen phosphorus.
Right, absolutely. Another. Yeah. Yes. Perfect. Thank you. Perfect example.
Another idea that comes into my mind with this character is a kind of forest deva, spirit of the forest.
Right.
Very etheric.
Right.
Thin-skinned,
Yes.
like phosphorus is.
Yes. And just before leaving the sanguine, just the idea that the positive qualities of sanguine is optimistic intensity. So we'll move to choleric. The choleric character is dynamic, forceful people, very forceful, very active, very aggressively active. It means that the step of the sanguine is bouncy. They sort of spring along the place, just like the spring lamb. The step of the choleric is very forceful and commanding. These people command your attention. Everything about their posture is like that. And they walk forcefully through the world. And the negative side of that is that they can perhaps unwittingly, just stamp other people out of the way. This is the Martian image. You know, Mars, or Ares, was not very beloved on Olympus because he would rush into battle upon his chariot, yes, with his cutlass and his swords, and just smash everything to pieces. There's the negative side of the choleric. The positive side, of course, is tremendous courage. Tremendous courage. Without the choleric energy in the world, we would not build. Maybe we would bounce, admiring the beauty, or if we were melancholic, we would introspect and go into ourselves and sink. If we're lymphatic, we would be, I will come to that one later, we will be another posture. The posture of the choleric is to go and do it. So, actually, our worlds are conquered by choleric energy. It is indeed the energy of conquest. But also, and if we go to the image of the kiln, we'll have the idea of the accumulative and constructive side of the choleric. In order to build things, you have to accumulate the materials and then use them. So this is another very positive side of choleric energy, which tends not to be talked about. You know, usually one thinks of Ares, and we forget about this other side. Collecting materials, having a sense of materials, using things to make it happen. The melancholic posture associated with autumn is the one about which there is probably the most literature. The Greeks loved the melancholics. They believed that their men of wisdom and their great teachers were all melancholics. The Elizabethans, you know, had their culture revolved around it very much. So it's the period of the harvest of the experiences of life, wrought through adventure and brought into an introspective mode. It's philosophical. Now the passions have been restrained, and the person, instead of rushing into things, becomes more methodical, more careful, more restrained. This is the position where we find the sage, the wise person, the traveller who has learnt the lessons of her travels. The quality, the primary quality, of course, is one of detachment, which can, interestingly enough, is very two-sided, is it not? Because detachment in its negative mode would be indifference, and in its positive mode would be wisdom. Let's look at the characters around this. I forgot to talk about the examples in homeopathic language of choleric. Nux Vomica, right. Yes. Huh? Sulfur? Sulfur, yeah, possibly, but very much Nux Vomica. Very typically Nux Vomica. Yes. Any other ideas?
See carcinosin in
No, not especially. No, I see carcinosin towards the bottom. We'll come to that in a minute. There's so much to say about this. It's difficult to know how to tackle it, really. No, we'll stay with Nux because it's a very good primary. I think Lachesis is, for me, is primary, phosphorus secondary. Nux Vomica is primary to describe this, to encapsulate it in one remedy. The melancholic. You're right, of course. You're right, of course. An aspect of nature mule. But I'm not quite happy about it. But Lycopodium, yes. I think this is, yes. I think this is good for Lycopodium. Describes it, yes, rather well. The character rather well. The lymphatic is actually the most complex. The lymphatic is between wet and cold. It's the hydrogenoid constitution that time. Worse for cold, wet. is an example. Is an example. There are a lot of remedies that constellate here. Calcarb is not the primary, in my opinion. Nature himself is one, yes. Right. Now, but the character of the lymphatic, they are traditionally described as being soft, slow, yielding, submissive, that kind of, yeah, like pulsatilla. There's the traditional description of these people. Their posture is one of submission, you know. I mean, you do it to me. And their resistance is a passive resistance. Shan't move. Yeah, it's the calcarian. Yeah. But there's, and we can understand that very, very readily, that posture. It also, in its negative, can be the posture of the victim.
So that's where carcinosin.
Yes, that's where carcinosin. The victim, Staphysagria too. See. Now, there is another form, though, which arises out of it. If the inner state is like that, one of submission, one of surrendering, then a compensatory mode may come into being very strongly. And the compensatory mode is make order, make structure, be clear about things, have form, have codes. We must adhere to absolutes, because if we don't have absolutes, we're in chaos. If we have chaos, everything falls to pieces. It's a total surrender. I can't bear it. I've got to attach myself to strong ideas, to rigid codes. Yes? Now what remedy am I describing? Kali, carbonicum, arsenicum, right, are also lymphatics. Lymphatic postures. And it's interesting now, we will talk about the polarities. The lymphatic is opposite the choleric. The melancholic is opposite the sanguine. If we go, just refer one up to the diagram on the top of the page to look at the difference, the static dormant of the lymphatic, of winter, has as its polar opposite dynamic explosive energies in summer and the choleric. The lymphatic posture of soft yielding can at times express itself in an angry eruption of violence, violent anger. I mean, they will submit and submit for as long as they can, and then there'll be an explosion. Like Staphysagria is like that. Arsenicum can be like that. Kali carbonicum, unusually, but can be like that. Kali bichromicum definitely can be like that.
Like calc through to belladonna in the cube.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yes. That would make sense. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. That makes sense very well. Like pulsatilla can be like that. Sepia, another lymphatic, needs as an intercurrent Nux Vomica, say all the books, to help its action along. Now, we understand very clearly why. For sepia, when she ceases to be submissive and under the yoke of her burdens, can erupt into a Nux Vomica kind of anger. It's as though there, the Nux Vomica is the acute of the sepia, the chronic, or in your example, the belladonna is the acute of the calcarea chronic. And if we look at the other polarity, sanguine melancholic, the sanguine is in the position of spring, the position of expansion, of dilation. The melancholic is in the position of autumn, of contraction and atrophy. So the very bouncy, chatty kind of people who your Matanda, your spirit of how did you describe your spirit?
Deva.
Your forest deva, who needs to be grounded. They need to be grounded. Note, to be grounded. They need to come to the pole, which is close to earth here, of melancholic. So they will attach themselves to the philosophical type. And we have the youth becoming the pupil of the old person. Very many marriages are like that, of course, the child to the adult. Because the optimistic, intense position there of sanguine is childlike, And the melancholic is with the wisdom of old age. Likewise, the old person, becoming too Saturnian and too introspective, will achieve great energizing through being with the hopeful intensity of the sanguine. Should we make a stop here for a moment? Because having talked about these things, maybe these are touching areas in you which would be useful to explore, actually. I mean, from the point of view of some psychological exploration. Because I'll bet, in fact, I'll guarantee that these speak truths for ourselves, for our own relationships, as well as, of course, for people that we know. So if you'd like, we'll have a minute just to be quiet and to go into introspective space, to inner space. And you may actually like to lie down for it, the way one would do in, the sort of psychological workshop exercise. And take it in a look. Would you like to do that? Do you think that would be... I don't want to force it on you. Do you think it would be useful? Yeah. Well, it follows the plan, of course, that the sanguine, on the pole of expansion, dilation vessels expanding, will lead towards situations like hemorrhaging and congestion of organs due to too much blood being there, or too much fluid there, warm, hot state. Hot, wet, state. So we have hot and wet, obviously, the bloodstream, the heart and the vessels. But also, if we think of sanguine and the movement of sanguine, the physical posture of sanguine, we get the idea of the skeletal muscles, ready to leap into action, movement. And also the spleen and some aspects of the liver. Well, let's look at the opposite. To go to the melancholic, the time of contraction. So we have marasmus, obviously, also constipation. And a very interesting expression. You see the expression black bile. This is a very old term. The Elizabethans used it to describe the quality of the melancholic. Black bile. Now, I've had patients who know nothing of these systems, just patient, describe their depression, because this is the place of introspection, which is often described as not melancholia, but I feel depressed, people say. And they go to their doctor and they're given Librium or something. Instead of understanding this is a process, this is a perfectly natural state to move into melancholia. For a melancholic, it's natural to be that way. But they describe this state, I've had patients describe this state as, I've had a patient say black bile. But other people talk about the black dog. Wasn't that Churchill who had a black dog that sat, a black dog that was with him? These descriptions, the black cloud, the black feeling, is the description of the state, the psychical state of the melancholic. So it relates to the gallbladder and also duodenum, intestines and colon very much. That whole area, like Lycopodium, it'll be a very strong area of focus for the melancholic.
Tarantula has this idea of the black spider.
Spider.
Thinking it being more sanguine in its negative, because it's to do with blood and congestion.
Yes, that's interesting. Yes. I will put tarantula up in the fire element very much, but quite. I get the idea of your polarity, right? Yes. Choleric's easy to talk about because the process, hot and dry, says inflammation, right, straight away. inflammatory states. And this was described again by the Elizabethans as being either red bile or yellow bile. But red describes it, for me personally, the best, because the idea of red anger and the bile being associated with anger. You know, I have bile. Oh, so... What are our descriptions? I vent my spleen on. What else do we say? For anger. Red with anger.
Made my blood boil.
Made my blood boil. Right. So, I mean, here we've got a number of areas affected: bile ducts, tubules, kidneys, bilirubin, blood, and the process boils, abscesses, so on, that are associated the second stage after the inflammation. So if we go to the other polarity, the other side of the dynamic moves towards the static and the dormant, wet, cold, winter pole. And here we have the hydrogenoid constitutions, worse for wet, damp. And the typical pathology that results from it, of course, is rheumatism, dropsy, edema, all the static fluid systems, lymphatic system, mucous membranes, synovial membranes, the capsules of the joints, cartilages, and of course tears, conjunctivae, all associated with this pole. This is the weeping pole, the sad, soft, submissive pole. And sometimes it's very easy to recognize the temperaments according to their physical constitutions. And if we're going to look at ourselves, because sometimes it's very difficult to look at ourselves from the point of view of the psyche, it's easier often just to look at the body. If we check out the kind of troubles that we're heir to, we're going to find our constitutional totality there very easily. And when you get pounding headaches, typically, you get joint and articular troubles and creak in cold, wet weather. Do you know what I mean? It's obvious that people's language is going to express their imbalance very directly. Their body language, but also the straightforward language they use to express themselves. So when somebody is describing their symptoms, if you're a homeopath, you're listening to people describing their symptoms, they very often, their language, everything about their expression places themselves on the map most clearly. And this is the constitutional totality. And if, after all, we're aiming to find a constitutional remedy, we would expect these two to be the same, while bearing in mind that the expression may be the pole opposite. Yesterday, I think that towards the end, we were talking about, was it you were talking about the yin and the yang and the flow of energy? Yes, and let's talk about that for a minute. Usually, when I talk on this subject, I actually begin with that, with the division of the totality into two. So maybe we go to that now. This is all old hat stuff for you, so I'll rattle through it ever so fast. Everybody knows this.
Oh, we don't.
It's fun, isn't it? Well, then feel free to add to it. The circle is just a two-dimensional representation of a sphere, of course, representing a totality. It's obvious that we choose spheres because we live on one and all the heavenly bodies are spherical. But if we look at them, what we see are circles in the sky, the circle of the sun, of the moon, of the planets, etc. So we'll use this as an image of totality, totality. And so there are various ways in which this totality may be divided. But why should it be divided, after all? The totality is, why anything? But then why the creation? What happened? Why did totality split itself? The Sufis say and I'm sure many other people say as well, but I noticed a Sufi quote that God created the universe in order to reveal himself to himself.
They also say that he did it because he was lonely.
Did they say that too?
She did it.
She was lonely. And, well, anyway, we were talking earlier about the implantation of the ovum in the womb and fertilization, etc. And of course, once fertilization has occurred, there is exactly this division. The unity of one cell divides into 2 cells, and then that into 4, etc. Eventually into the multicellular organism that we recognize, if we're humans, as ourselves. So this first division can be represented in so many ways. Typically, in the diagrams that I have seen from the West, the division is a straightforward division across the center. And usually one half is shaded as dark and one half is left as light. And so you have immediately the idea of the polarities. The polarity light, dark, night, day, night, good, evil, right, wrong, right hand, left hand, etc. It's the Chinese who, with their yin and yang symbol, divide the totality with a fluid line. The Taoist philosophy is one of continual movement. The energy, the Tao, is something that you can never own. It doesn't belong. You can't grab it. It is impossible to define because it is constantly moving. You are only on the path of that movement through your life. And the symbol is further enhanced by the introduction of a point of the equal opposite within the body of the other. That's not very well expressed. Within the field that is shaded dark, there is a point of light which mirrors the light of the other part of the yin-yang symbol. Likewise, this point of darkness is within the light. I've seen this drawn yet more complex. In other words, you can draw the yin and the yang with a little yin and the yang. And within the little yin and the yang, there's another little yin and the yang. The idea being that this is a constantly changing and dynamic process. Certainly, in the philosophy, the Taoist philosophy, when the energy in a particular state or in a particular organization is very strongly towards one quadrant, so this is far stronger than that. This state of imbalance. If we expand this state of imbalance and expand it, what is happening within the light area? It's getting more and more concentrated, yes. And also the black dot within it is becoming more and more concentrated. Eventually, what will happen? We'll be left with a circle completely filled with blackness. What about the dot there? What happens at the polar extreme? At the absolute extreme of something? You can't go any further in that direction.
It flips over
Into its opposite. Yes. It flips over into its opposite. It's actually a very good symbol for the treatment of likes by likes, isn't it? Because you intensify what is happening, and you go on intensifying it to the point at which the pressure is unbearable, and then it flips into its opposite. Another way of drawing it is takes us back into unity, of course. This is not a straight line with yang on one side and yin on the other. It's just we viewed it that way for the sake of some kind of didactic expediency. Actually, yin and yang, or any continuum, is a continuum, and we're back to another circle with yin and yang. And wherever we start, say if we start, this is yin, and we go round of yang, and then it becomes yin again, and we go round again. This division of the totality by means of this symbol is very elucidating. I believe that it teaches us much. So a beautiful picture. Before leaving it, let's just run through qualities, opposites, qualities of yin and qualities of yang, so we get a clear idea of what we're talking about. Do you want to just run through them? Male, female, right. Yang would be male, yin is the receptive, and yang is the creative, the active. Right, this is the matrix, the mother. And this is the spirit. In the Genesis, does it not say that the Spirit of God, how is it, moved over the waters? And here we have the division of the two elements again. Light and dark, right? Yang is light, yin is dark, yeah. More? Hot and cold, right. Yang is hot, yin is cold.
Right and left.
Right and left. Yang is right, yin is left. Any more?
Up and down.
Up and down, yes. Accepting, rejecting. What else?
Black and white.
Yeah.
Can you say which way around accepting and rejecting are? Accepting is the yin.
Ah. Yes, it's a very
I
good...
think these are opposites, but
Yes.
it seems that they...
Yes. I have a problem with that one. Accepting and rejecting are usually put as opposites, and I'm actually not sure that they are.
Yeah.
And I think it was I who just said it. Yes, it may be better to put accepting and rejecting as creative qualities, and their opposite is neither accepting nor rejecting, which would put it into the static position of indifference.
Yeah.
Positive and negative ones.
Anyway, positive and negative, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, if we leave the twofold for a minute, well, the natural division of 2 into 2 again gives us 4. But we do have a trinity, a division into 3, which is not to be forgotten.
Mind, body, spirit.
Mind, body, spirit, right? Mind, body, spirit. Yes.
Triads in music are quite
Important.
powerful.
Yes. Of course, we've forgotten the homeopath's triad. 3 miasms.
And the three-legged stool.
The 3-legged stool, right. 3 is very important because it's the first stable shape. It's important to the cook. If you wish to cook above a fire, you need a tripod to hang your pot on. Right? If you build a very simple structure, I mean, just stand, you need at least 3 poles to hang your canopy round. Well, let's look at those. We have, I'll just dot in the 4-fold just to remind us that it is there. Let's look at those. From our point of view, it's quite interesting to look at miasms. And to superimpose this over the map that we have, syphilis, psychosis, and sora, like that. I feel that the most useful thing to arise out of that is actually the trinity of the three miasms imposed upon the map of form. It actually has some practical utility for us as prescribers. Okay, so let's just look at this again. In this map, below the horizon, we have darkness and things governed by the moon. I hope you don't mind me drawing it backwards, but... And here we have things governed by the sun. Likewise, we could think of this as being, of these as being spiritualizing qualities, and these as being soul qualities. Now, everything to do with darkness and night and the moon, the receptive, it is also the place where we're going to find most of the dark side of the psyche, the shadow material. Whereas up in the sunlit hemisphere, we'll find things that are more to do with direct actions and with the direct actions of consciousness. If we go back to our map of the elements, we had up here the element of fire associated with heat, and we had down here the element of air associated with cold, with chill. And if you think about what happens when you bring together the fire element and the air element, what do you get? If you put oxygen, air, and fire, you get all the processes to do with combustion. And so our images for this might be things like lightning or sparks, and light, just light itself. So along this axis, if we want images of this for this axis, we could have those images. Here we had earth, on the horizontal earth and water. And so if we want images for this, water over earth, oceans, and earth and water gives us mud. So we get the idea of things like flowing rivers, mud, oceans, and so on. And in a sense, we have another image here below is like the ocean of the subconscious, and above is the airy element, or the element of the firmament, actually, containing all the stars and all the luminary bodies, the bodies that give us heat and light and energy. So here are the sea of infinite possibilities in the realm of manifestation, and here are the infinite possibilities in the realm of potentiality. Potentiality above, manifestation below. Likewise, the fiery element, the heat element, which we associate with the will. Another way of describing this axis of fire and air is to describe it as the axis of will and the axis of desire. It's desiring something. I want it. And that actually takes us into the lower aspect of desiring, which is emotions. So we could take this axis, fire, air, as all of those things. First, the highest intention of will, through the various levels to just the lowest form of emotional response, close even maybe to instinctual responses. The earth-water axis, especially if we take the image of mud, it will become clear that what we are thinking about here, earth and water, is the stuff, the material side, the material stuff that we use. It's what we eat. We eat the stuff of the water, of the stuff of the earth, and we drink water. And the whole process here is one of digestion. So the earth-water axis is digestion. And there are several aspects to digestion. After all, we think of the alimentary canal being concerned with digestion of food, but we must also think of the mind as being associated with the digestion of information. So along this axis we also have intellect, digestion and intellect. And I want to bring before your attention this quote. Actually, I have written it out for you, so you might like to... Would you like to pass those around? You? And you may look. You want to look at the side that has got not the Jung, but the other side that with more words to it is by Kent. And you see, Kent was being an Illuminist, of course, a Swedenborgian, allowed his understanding to range wide. This is what Kent says. It's slightly reduced, actually, from the writings, in lesser writings. Would you like me to read it? And you can follow along. Correspondence of organs and direction of cure. Hering first introduced the law of direction of symptoms, from within out, from above downward, in reverse order of their appearance. It does not occur in Hanuman's writing. It is spoken of as Hering's law. The innermost of man consists of will, understanding, memory, and these are extended outwards through the general physical organism. This idea belongs here in considering the direction of symptoms, from the innermost to the outermost. We meet patients in whom we make what we would not know would be a good prescription, except for a comprehension of this relation of the innermost to the outermost. A patient returns after a prescription has been made, who from his symptoms would think himself worse. Yet he could not be so considered except by his reasoning that something had appeared which he did not have before. Then the doctor would be tempted to change the remedy if he is not familiar with correspondence of organs. By his knowledge of correspondence of organs, he is able to know whether the patient is better or worse. The physical organs correspond to internal man, to the will and understanding. The intellectual faculties consider a proposition presented, weighing it in the light of things learnt, to determine whether it be false or true, or partly false or partly true. The memory holds it while it is examined and considered, and the intellectual faculties digest what is received, separating truth from false, and appropriating the truth and rejecting the false. The stomach receives food. It and the small intestines digest and assimilate that which is good for the body, and cast off that which is not suitable, that which is indigestible, false. These correspond to the intellectual part of man, doing for the body what the intellectual faculties do for man. The kidneys perform similar work, separating false from the truth in the blood. The worn-out part of the blood is manufactured into urea, urates, and is carried off. The kidneys do for the blood what the intellectual faculties do for truth. At first, you may not perceive any relation in these things, but long observation and examination of these reveals much. When you are treating a patient insane in the intellectual faculties, stomach disorders or intestinal disorders appear as the patient improves. Cramps and diarrhea occurs, the disorders extending through the intestinal canal. In another patient, kidney affection with albumin in the urine results in the course of reaction from mental disorder. Pain in the back and albumin in the urine appear, although the nurse says the patient is improving. When the reverse is true, it is deleterious. I want to refer to the diagram, which is called Elements and Associated Qualities. Already covered most of this and more besides, but just to look at the creative aspects of the four elements, the positive aspects of the four elements. So when we're dealing with fire, the fire element, the warmth element, we are talking about the creative power of love. This would be a human correspondence of that element, elemental quality. Creative power of love. When we're dealing with water, the positive element of the watery element, of the watery side, is peace. As opposed, to agitation, etc., and so on. The positive quality of air would be communication. And the positive quality of earth is selflessness. I'll come back to those. I hope I'll remember to later when we talk, because we're going to be talking very much about the negative, of course, because as healers we're dealing with the correction of pathology, correction of suffering. So just a moment to look at positive qualities. See, the positive quality of fire is to do with sweetness. Of water is to do with saltiness. Of air, sourness. And of earth, bitterness. So somebody, for instance, whose imbalance is primarily towards the earth, the air pole, say. So they are centered down in the darkness of despair much of the time. They wish to seek or move towards, in order to regain wholeness, they need to move towards the spiritualizing elements of fire. And you'll find them craving sweets. Somebody who's very fiery in character and most unearthed, you'll find them craving sour. Sour and sweet are obviously complementary pairs. And in Japanese, Chinese cooking, where the yin-yang balance is very important, this will be one of the considerations. Sour and sweet are one of the important balances. Any cook will know that. You always balance sour and sweet, don't you, in your dish? If you, for instance, make a dish of tomatoes, and they aren't absolutely sweet, like British tomatoes, which are not, you will always add some sugar to balance it out, because the intention in cooking is to move towards the center. But isn't it interesting the way certain cooks, because of their own imbalances, add too much sugar or too much salt, or like the bitter herbs of the earth? And in so doing, they're correcting their own imbalance. So, let's refer to the opposite page of Kent. Here's a quote by Jung. There are four aspects of psychological orientation beyond which nothing fundamental remains to be said. In order to orientate ourselves, we must have a function which ascertains that something is there. This is the function of sensation. Sensation is through the five senses. Without our eyes to perceive what is there, without our ears to hear it, without our touch to make contact with it, we would not know that anything is there. We know the world around us. We know it's there through our senses. We need a second function which establishes what it is. This is the function of thinking. It's making the relationship between things. This thing, I have met it before. It's made out of wood. It has four legs. It's a table. Which is, of course, instant. After many experiences of these things, and having been told many times it's called table, I now know it's a table. This is thinking function. Without it, I would be lost. I would not be able to orientate myself. I would have experiences coming in through sensory functions, but no way of orientating myself. The third function states whether it suits us or not, whether we wish to accept it or not. It's the function of feeling. I like it. I move towards it. I embrace it. I don't like it. I should get away from that. I reject it. All to do with feelings. And very, very closely associated with feelings, of course, are instincts, which are like the most earthed and physical expression of feeling. To do with the survival of the physical body, instincts. To do with the survival of the psyche, feelings. And a fourth function, which indicates where it came from and where it is going, intuition. Where it came from and where it's going, its direction. So for Jung, intuition he associates with the element of fire. Because after all, intuition comes in a flash. Suddenly we know where something is coming from and where it's going without any recall to the other three of the functions. Intuition gives it to us like that. So it's like fire. And so if we look at this, we'll refer to the page which says the four elements and associated functions. The heat process, fire, is associated with will and with intuition. Naturally, it's also associated with the heart. And of course, we also associate the heart with the center of love. It's the center of heat in the body at all these levels. Not merely is it's perhaps it's not true to say it's the center of heat, but it's the distributor of heat. It is the pump which gives heat in the form of the constituents that are necessary for the cellular combustion to occur within our body. Also the nervous system we would associate with the fire function. And the eyes, sex drive, libido. Everything associated with creative energy, with rejoicing, with laughter, and with religious ecstasy. And a key word at the highest level, of course, is, as we said, is love. There's something missing in here, which Flea pointed out to me. She was talking about the liver, and she said the liver is a very difficult organ to place on the circle, just like the skin is, because the skin is everywhere. You cannot place the skin on the circle into any quadrant. It's all round. The liver is in 3 quadrants. It's actually in water, earth, and fire. And I've only put it in one of them. In earth, yes, because it's more in earth than the others. His main center is in earth, but it's also in fire and in water. Least in water, I would say. Would you agree, Flea? Yes, least in water, somewhat in fire, and most in earth. What I would like to do is look across the polarity. Huh? Let's look at air and then talk about that polarity. The air process, Jung would associate this with thinking, and I want to discuss that for a moment. Thinking, the process of thinking, of being intellectual, is cold. When we talk about cold reason. And the reason it is if abstract thought is where we divorce thought from form. Abstract thought, this is particularly true for abstract thought, belongs in the air quadrant. It disorientates us eventually. It's like the distinction between a priori reasoning and a posteriori reasoning. If everything is a priori, we go off into, eventually, we find ourselves quite unearthed and quite divorced from nature and from form. Because your thoughts can take you anywhere. Up any old blind alley, if you let them. Actually, the air process we all know is associated with oxidation. And the product of oxidation is acid. This is the pole of acidity. Just to give a very mundane example, you know, if you allow your wine, if you allow oxygen access to your wine, it becomes vinegar. The process of oxidation is associated with sour. The German word for oxygen is Sauerstoff. Sour stuff, that which makes sour. So naturally, the organs associated would be lungs. And the negative, you know, things like if you don't have enough oxygen, you asphyxiate, syncope. Obviously, we have ears and nose, therefore the sense of taste and hearing, and associated with air also music, which travels through air. But of course, music is going to draw upon it, all from the other elements as well, obviously. Obviously. We have to have fire to give us dynamic, water to give us the feeling side, earth to give us the structure. And the other thing that's very important from a psychological point of view about air, and it's just really associated with this idea of cold reason, is if love is the quality of fire, the quality of air is indifference. You can put this differently. You could just say being cut off, non-reaction. So just refer down to the bottom chart, which is some psychical aspects of the four elements. And we'll take a look at the pathology that we may associate with the bottom of the circle. Death and damnation. Fear of evil, fear of the devil. The quote, "the frozen wasteland of despair," is from one of the provers of camphor, the remedy camphor. This was the state he came into. Let's use it as an example a little bit. Camphor is a remedy which physically we associate with coldness and the surface burning. Often burning surface, the patient wants to throw off covers, although they are subnormal temperature and freezing, but they feel hot.
Burning can be
Internal as well. It can be internal as well. It can be. Burning and freezing. Burning and freezing. Camphor is one of the remedies that is on the axis air, fire. But if you read the provings, you will see it's a remedy of Armageddon. It's the end of the world. It's an extraordinary picture with this frozen wasteland of despair, is the quote. Another possibility: the dark night of the soul. This is the bottom of the circle. This is the point of maximum chill and darkness. This is the bottom of the pit. This is where you feel that the light has gone out. This is the deepest form of despair. But remember, at the point of the greatest darkness, the light of the stars are the brightest. This is the point of light in the dark quadrant of yin. There is a point of light of yang. The darkest moment of the night, the stars are at their brightest.